And what you do is you go there. When you go there, they give you on the first day, they give you, excuse the pun, but they give you a crash course on parachuting. They teach you anything and everything they believe you should know in the first day of that 2-day course. The afternoon of that day, you go for your first jump. And I've learned many things during that jump, but a very powerful lesson that I've learned there is all about the thing around obstacles and opportunities. Now, let me just explain a little bit. One thing that we've done there, now, I remember thorough preparation is key to parachuting, but it's the same with life. We cannot live our lives if we don't prepare well. And thorough preparation in parachuting is a matter of life and death. And I think maybe not that different in terms of life. Then training and learning. You know, some people are so clever that you can't teach them anything. But if you are a learner and you are open for learning, then you are better prepared for this thing we call life. The third thing is repetition and conditioning. So whatever they've taught us, we went through those things over and over and over again until it almost like became, although it was in a video, it became part of who you were. And then check each other's gear. Nobody in life is meant to be an island. We need each other. When things in my life fell apart, even during this time when I did this course, it was other people that saved me over and over again. So check each other's gear, be ready. And then number 5, we had to jump. We had to jump. In life, often it's that one time, that chance you take, that risk you take, that makes all the difference in your life. And once you've jumped, then out of the plane. Now, I remember when I went out of that plane, you go out of the plane and you have to shout, Arch 1000, Arch 2000, Arch 3000. And then at some stage, the thing is you need to open the parachute. Now, fortunately, with your first jump, they call it static line. The aeroplane opens the parachute for you. There's a line attached to your chute and on the plane. And as you jump out, it opens it. And I was very, very happy that was the case, because as I jumped out of that plane, I forgot everything that I've learned. So instead of Arch 1000, I just went, ah, and in the next moment, my parachute was open. And then they taught us to look up. And as I looked up, everything flooded back into my memory. I needed to have this memory, this rhyme in my head: float, sound, shape, lines, toggles. Float says that you need to get this floating feeling. And it needs to be dead quiet, because of those, if the wind is making a noise past your ears, you are not floating, you might just be falling. So the moment you start floating and it gets quiet, you look up, and what you need to see is something like that picture. So I looked up and I saw my parachute is open, and there's like this relief coming over you. And then there are certain lines coming from the top of the parachute through that thing on top of my head that they call the canopy. And from the canopy, 2 lines drops with 2 handles in them. They call that toggles. And those toggles you use to steer. The thing is, if you want to move faster and go faster towards the ground, you just lift up both toggles. And if you want to go slower, you pull down on the toggles, the parachute opens up in the front, and then it slows down, and you can stay up there for much longer. If you wanted to turn left, you pull down on the left-hand toggles, and the parachute will turn left. If you pull on the right-hand toggle, the parachute will go right. So if you keep it up there, the parachute will go straight the way you are facing. Now, why is this important? That will become clear in a very short moment, and that will also show you how I got saved by this principle over and over in my life when things went wrong. The next thing is to orientate yourself. So now instead of looking up, you look down. You look at the ground, and the first thing you are looking for is, where's the landing zone? Where is it flat? Where is it open? Where is it that I'm working towards? Not much unlike life. Do you have a goal? Do you know where you're going? Do you know where you need to end up? Okay? Do you have all the gear? What is the direction of the wind? Because you need to work with the wind to take you to where you want to go. Now, wind can be your partner, but wind can also be the enemy. And if you look down, where are those areas where you don't want to go to? The obstacles, the potential danger, the things that you need to be careful for. Sounds pretty much like life, doesn't it? And once you have orientated yourself, you know where you want to go, everything is working, life and parachuting is supposed to be fun. And I have learned when things go wrong in people's lives, that's the one thing we lose. We stop enjoying life. And there are many reasons why some people are merely existing and they're not living life fully. But life, like parachuting, is meant to be enjoyed. Enjoy the life. And then, even if everything is in place, you've done all your planning, you know exactly where you're going, your gear has been checked, everything is in place, things still go wrong. We call it life. Things happen that you did not bargain for, that you did not plan for, that you did not expect. And if you look at that, it's all about the obstacles. Now look at that picture. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see on the left-hand side of this picture is a whole lot of hungry crocodiles. And to the right top of that picture, you see this parachuter coming in. I'm sure that if you look at that, you will agree that parachuter doesn't want to go where he is heading. That's called a serious obstacle. Okay? Now, here's the principle. This is the important thing I'd like you guys to remember. What he said to me, like when you come into land and instead of the safe open area where you are heading towards, you are facing power cables. You see you are approaching power cables. You don't want to go there. The first thing they taught us is acknowledge and recognize the danger and then look away from it. Turn your head and face away from the obstacle. Look away from the danger. And that is so against our human nature. We want to see the problem. We want to face the problem. I mean, have you ever seen somebody running away from a dog? I mean, they're not running away from the dog looking where they're going. They run away from the dog looking behind them, where's the dog? So two things happen. First of all, they don't look where they're going. And secondly, they can't run as fast. So what they taught us is look away from the obstacle and look for a safe place to land. If the power cables are in front of you and the safe landing spot is behind you and you hang in your harness like this and you look over your right shoulder to the safe landing spot, that shoulder drops and the parachute responds to where you look. So the important thing for me here is that life gives us what we focus on. If we focus for problems and we focus on the problems, we will get more and more of that problems. If we start focusing and looking for solutions and we look away from the problem, that's what we will find, solutions. Now, I don't know if you have ever spoken to somebody who's in a very toxic relationship or who's very unhappy at work, who hates his work, who hates his boss. Listen to what that person is speaking about. And what you will hear is they are focused on everything that's wrong. Everything this person does that irritates him or her. Everything the boss does that he feels is not right. Every decision and policy the company brings in that they hate, that's what they talk about. If you listen to people talking about driving to work, they don't talk about all the hundreds of people who law-abiding and who did the right thing and who gave him a spot to come into the traffic. No, they talk about that idiot who did everything wrong. We as human beings tend to often focus on the obstacle, on the problem. We tend to focus on what is wrong. And the more we focus on that, the more we get. So learn to look away from this obstacle and look for solutions. Look for answers. Look for somebody to help you. Look for a way out. Look for a place and a way to make it better. That is the powerful principle that saved me over and over and over again. So this is a quick opportunity to put something in your chat box again. Doreen, if you could have your eyes and ears open for me there. I'd like to know what caused things to happen in life. What caused things to happen or change in your life? If you could just put a short comment in the chat box. Let's just hear from 2 or 3 or 4 people before we go on, because I have quite a story to tell you.
Okay, so I'm looking at the chat box and just waiting for responses to come through. So the question, what causing? Sorry, I have this one that says circumstances.
What is causing things? What is causing circumstances? What's causing change in our lives?
And this one from Rion says, things change when I change. Amelia says, when you accept change, it's necessary.
Okay, so Rion says, when I change, so it has something to do with him. What is it that the other person said?
And this one says, it's what I'm focusing on. This one says awareness when something unexpected happens.
Okay, all right, cool.
Once it's coming through.
That's fine. Let's just get
and this
one more, 2 more
responses.
responses.
Happens. Change happens. Life happens. Change happens. And this one from Eunice says, the will to keep moving regardless always causes that change I need. Isaac also says mind orientation. Over to you, Stefan.
No, that's cool. So there are quite a lot of comments, and very few of them are actually answering the question. It's all relevant and it's all important in terms of change. But there are only basically 3 reasons why things change in our lives. The first one is our own decisions and choices cause things to happen in our lives. That's the first thing, and cause things to change in our lives. I choose to do something, or I choose someone, or I choose a job, or I choose another address, or I choose to move in a specific direction, to participate in something. My own decisions and choices cause things to happen and change in my life. But not everything that happens in my life is as a result of my own choices and my own decisions. Sometimes it's not my decisions and choices, it's the decisions and choices of other people. Some of those people could be in my family, could be close, it could be in my circle of friends, it could be in the company, but some of those people could be completely disconnected from me in the sense of relationship. So it could be the president of the United States of America, it could be our president, it could be your parents, it could be your spouse, it could be your children, it could be your neighbors, it could be the person driving in front of you. It could be anybody that you are in contact with, or that affect the things that affect you away from you. And sometimes we have influence, sometimes we can do something about it, and sometimes we can't. And it's important that we think about these questions when things in our lives start changing and things start happening, especially if it's things that I don't want. The third one, I call it acts of God, life, nature, miracles, bad luck, Satan, anything that is not connected visibly, directly to any other human being. Things that can't be explained, things that I don't know why. Now, why is this important? Because sometimes we need to take responsibility, and sometimes we need to question our own decisions and choices. Sometimes we need to look at how are we influencing and living our lives that cause other people to make certain choices, which indirectly also make me partly responsible. And sometimes there's nothing I can do about what's happening to me. And therefore, that question, why, is not helping. But this is just setting the stage for what I'd like to talk about. And I'd like to use this personal transition, obviously not my whole story. I'm going to start with my story at a stage where I was in my early 30s. Now, if you look at this graph, for this part of the session, I'm just going to stop my video and then get all your attention focused on this graph. Now, if you look at this graph, you'll see on the left-hand side, I have an indication of my state of well-being. Right at the bottom is absolute despair. And then right at the top is elation or feeling good. And somewhere down this line in the middle is a level of being okay. Now, if you look at the top, there's always has changed. Then there is the provisional adjustment. Then there is the inner contradictions. Then you find the inner crisis, and then the process of reconstruction and recovery. Now, I'm going to share with you two examples in my life. One where something very good turned very, and another example where something very unexpectedly traumatic happened in my life. Now, let's start with my life more or less in May 1998. Okay. Now, for some reason, my presentation doesn't. Oh, there you go. So I'm going to a positive event. In May 1998, I was living in Johannesburg. I was a business development manager for a big insurance company in South Africa. And I was happily married with two beautiful children, a boy of about 4 years old and a baby girl of about 2 years old, Valdo Namore. And we had a third one on the way. And at that stage, we already knew it's going to be a girl. And I got this call from one of the managers, the leaders at our head office in Cape Town. And he said to me, please, would you consider moving down to Cape Town? Would you mind coming and work with me? And he says there'll be a raise in income. We are looking for a new leadership role that we want to promote you into. But I'd like you to become part of the team. Now, first of all, you'll see that the moment that news comes, it goes from just being okay to a sense of elation and excitement. And then the question is, but is this really true? Will this be the right decision? What about my family? What if I make a mistake? What if I shouldn't go? And then, yes, but can you believe it? I can go and stay in Cape Town. I've always wanted to stay in Cape Town. But what if my wife doesn't want to go? What about my family and parents and my siblings that I'm leaving up here? And now all of these things happen in a matter of a short time. And we prayed about it, and we thought this seemed to be the right thing. And we made this big decision. And in June 1998, we moved to Cape Town. Now, the first thing that happens in our lives when we make a conscious decision for something better or something good, something exciting, is that we go into that honeymoon phase. Now, those of you that are married or have been married or in a brand new romantic relationship or even have started a brand new job, you will know what I'm talking about. The honeymoon is pretty much too good to be true. I don't know if you remember, but right after I got married to this beautiful woman that I called my wife, she was not only beautiful, I mean, she didn't even have bad breath in the mornings. I mean, she didn't snore. Everything she did was cute and nice. And if we go into a new situation, we move into a new job, we move into a new town, pretty much we just look and see and experience the good. And that's what happened when we moved to Cape Town. And unbelievably, it was just in the start of, towards the end of the winter. And we couldn't wait to explore nature, to make new friends. We got 3 months paid leave, so to speak, because we could find a new place for us that we could enjoy. We went house hunting. We went down to the beach often. We drove around exploring the whole time. It was great honeymoon. But then what happens is, guys, real life happens. A few things happen. The first thing is some of the problems that we believe we leave behind when we move into the new, they follow us into the new, because some of those things are part of who we are. It's not part of necessarily only what we do. And although we often blame our circumstances and our surroundings, those things follow us because it's part of something that we do wrong. A wrong way of looking or engaging with the world. Bad habits or character traits or values. But when we move into a new job, we find out that it actually is just another job. And when things start going wrong, you could start questioning your decision. In our case, what happened, the first thing is, when we got to Cape Town, is our house didn't sell in Joburg. And we tried, we signed on a new house in Cape Town, but our house had to sell. It didn't sell. So we got tenants in, we got agents up there to put tenants in our house. And in a matter of 8 months, we had 5 different tenants in and out of the house, a lot of them not paying. We couldn't understand it. So eventually we had to pay 2 places. We had to rent down here, and we had our house at in Joburg that we couldn't sell. Eventually we sold it at a huge loss. The second thing that happened is the plans in Joburg changed. A new divisional manager was appointed, and she had different plans. And those plans that the first divisional manager had for me wasn't part of her plans. So instead of me being promoted, I got demoted into another position, and I had to work with the people that were supposed to report to me as their manager. So I was now just a skills development consultant. And we had financial stress. My wife couldn't work. She was heavily pregnant. Financially, we were struggling. We moved into a very small old place. We were struggling to make ends meet. At work, I felt like my value was not recognized. And then eventually I started losing confidence, even questioning my own value. And from this excitement and this honeymoon, suddenly we were now staying at a place where things were completely different. And what happened then, at this stage, I thought it was just the financial problems and things like that, when one night, in a huge argument, my wife broke it to me, told me that 8 years before, she had an affair with my best friend. What actually came from that was the fact that she confessed that she was in an extramarital affair with somebody that she met in Cape Town. Now you can imagine all this excitement and this honeymoon, moving into uncertainty, losing confidence, struggles financially, and then leading into the news that my wife has been unfaithful. And not only that, she wanted a divorce. She wanted out. She didn't want to do this anymore. And I remember when I was a young man, just a couple of months before this whole thing started, I remember thinking how absolutely lucky I was and how happy I was to have and be who I was and the family that I'm in. And here I found myself begging my wife to reconsider. I remember thinking that if she was ever unfaithful, I wouldn't be able to accept that. She must just take her stuff and leave. But now, when she told me this, we had this 3 beautiful babies, 3 beautiful children, and I couldn't see myself living without them. But you know what? The very important thing I've learned here was that I can't make her love me. I can't make her want to. So some of the things that happened in my life was my own choices, was my own decisions. But here I was faced with something that somebody else chose, and I had no control over the choices. to cut a long story short, we actually got divorced, and I had to work through this very depressing time. I remember at the time when I was thinking about this, you know, my whole ego got such a shock, because how can I be that bad? Because the guy that she chose in my place was much older than me. He could have been a dad. He had bigger financial problems than I had, and he was ugly. I mean, I was thinking, how can I be so bad that she didn't want me? And I really had to deal with a lot of depression and a crisis at that time. Now, I'm gonna tell you more about this a little bit later, but I want to fast forward 3 years. In that 3 years, I met those friends. That's when we went parachuting. That's where I learned this powerful lesson of the parachute principle and what we focus on. And as I shifted my focus and I met these friends, I recovered to a point where a good friend of mine actually challenged me about where I focus. Now, when I was happily married, I had this dream to one day help people with their marriages. How ironic. My wife and I were seen as the go-to couple. Our friends came to us when they struggled with conflict, when they struggled with communication. And we actually spoke about one day having a counseling business, a place where people can come to put their lives together. And I remember this time, I completely lost my dream. And I met this friend who was also a pastor in a church that I went through. Let me just quickly say that I completely lost my relationship with God. I couldn't believe that he didn't want to help me. I felt like he didn't want to answer me. It felt like he couldn't control, you know, the decisions of others. And that was a big lesson that I've learned, is that he cannot make us want to. But anyway, eventually I became part of a church. And this friend that I met, his name was Quivers, he challenged me about my dream. He said, Stefan, you have to dream it. And I just said to him, listen, Quivers, my dream was to help people with their marriages. I couldn't even save my own. Why? How will people listen to somebody who has made a mess of his own life, who has made a mess of his own relationship? And one day, I was driving home from with a friend of mine after work. And in South Africa, one sport that is big here is rugby. And rugby, part of it is to put the ball behind the line. That's called the try. And then you have to kick this ball through the uprights of the goal. And I remember seeing this game, the ball was planted and somebody had to kick this ball through the poles. And I realized the stadium was full of people and everybody was watching this kick, and the kick, and then the kicker was I was expected to kick this ball through the poles, but I couldn't kick. I remember all the years I played rugby, I couldn't kick. And then this message came to me: listen, the ball is both the opportunity go away from I can't do it, or you can start kicking and keep on kicking until you get it right. And that stuck with me. And a couple of weeks later, Kobus came to me and he said to me, Stefan, I want the two of us to arrange a father-son hike into the mountains. I want you to be one of the speakers. I will speak to the boys about how to build a good, strong relationship with your dad. And I want you to speak to the dads about how to build a good, strong relationship with their sons. And first of all, I wasn't prepared to do that. And he just kept on working and chipping away at my resistance until one day I said, okay, let's do it. So we this whole thing. We hiked into the mountain onto a high spot. There was a beautiful waterfall coming down on the side. Yes.
Yeah, for a moment, the video.
Sorry, are you?
For a moment. So I was wondering if you'd be okay to switch off your video just for a moment. so that we don't lose bandwidth.
Okay, how's that better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, cool. So we went into this beautiful, beautiful place in the mountains with this wonderful spot at the bottom of a high waterfall. And under the trees, we sat in two groups, and Kobus spoke to the boys, and I spoke to the fathers, to the dads. And the only way I knew was to say to them, how do you do that? And to facilitate a conversation with them. And after this, the whole idea was that the boys play in the water, they swim, they jump off the rocks. Now, my son Valdu was afraid of heights. And although as part of what we did high jumps from high rocks into the water, that day we decided we are not going to do any of it. So Valdu and I and Kobus and his son Yaku, we hiked up into the gorge. We had a beautiful, wonderful day. And as we came back, right at the top of the waterfall was a group of people that were standing looking down the waterfall. And Kobus asked them, what is it that they are looking at? And they said, no, they wanted to jump, but they don't know if it's safe. And Kobus turned to me and he said, no, it is absolutely safe if you jump in the right spot. And he asked me to show them where to jump. And at first I said to him, Kobus, but you know what? We've got the boys with us. We are done with our jumping and playing. Let's just go. Our picnic baskets are at the bottom. You have to walk to the side of the waterfall, and among the trees, there's a very safe route down. And he said, no, leave the boys with me. You jump. I will bring the boys down. So I didn't even think about talking to my son Valdu. I just turned around and I jumped into the water. And I was about busy swimming out when I heard something. And as I turned around, I saw my son falling down the rocks. He must have slipped. He hit the rocks a couple of times. He fell in the water. I screamed. I swam as fast as I could. I got to him. I turned him over, and I realized it was severe because he was unconscious. I pulled him out on the side, and I started doing CPR. In the small group that were with us were 3 young doctor students, actually doctors already, and they took over from me. They stabilized him, and they were continuing with CPR. And one of the doctors told me that the problem is not his heart. The problem is his head. He hit his head severely. He had some serious brain damage, and they didn't know if he was going to die there, if he would survive. About 20 minutes later, my son died on that spot. The very, very day that I risked taking a step in line with my dream of becoming a speaker and helping people, my son died. Now, if you look at this graph, you would agree with me that that is one serious negative loss. So what the first thing I experienced at that moment was an immense numbness. It was like I didn't feel anything. It was like I wasn't there. It was, I didn't experience any emotions. I just felt completely paralyzed. But then very quickly, this whole disbelief came over me that this can't be true. I must be dreaming. This isn't happening. It's not happening to me. I'm going to wake up just now. And the disbelief sometimes turns quickly into the next phase, which is minimizing or denial. But a lot of times with some people, this takes longer before you get there, and it keeps on longer. This is a very personal journey. But in my case, at the spot, I just heard myself saying, I'm okay. People, Stefan, are you right? I'm okay. I'm okay. I mean, there's no ways that I could have been okay. I must have been in complete denial, not recognizing what was happening to me. And then the next thing is that same emotions that I felt when I heard that bad news from my wife was confusion, anger, fear, and sadness. Emotions that you can't explain. Now, for me, and I'm sure like so many other people, that led to a crisis and one big question: why? Why on this day? Why my son? Why me? Why in this way? Why, God? Why? But if you look at this, again, it's a combination of all three, the things that cause things. First of all, my own choice and decision to go there, to participate, to take my son with. Secondly, the decision and choice of somebody else. What happened at the top of the waterfall, where Quibus was supposed to be watching, some place, an area where I had no control. And then that whole thing about the acts of God. Why didn't he survive? Some other people fall much higher and they survive. They actually walk away from accidents. Why did he die? Why? And you know what? The first thing that we tend to do, or that often happens, is that we quit. Now, this quitting can be anything from quitting on your job, quitting in a relationship, but also quitting in life. Quitting in life could just be that I'm not living anymore, I'm just merely breathing, but it could also mean suicide. And I remember when I was stuck in this crisis, I was lying in my bath one night, and I was seriously considering suicide. I said to God, listen, I don't want to make it worse. I don't want to make a statement. I just can't be here anymore. And I was planning my own suicide. I was thinking, how can I do it calmly and cleanly and quickly? And I was considering if I could maybe somehow just bleed out in the bath and just pull the plug at the right time. And I was really working on that big thing. And you know what? I was planning it. Other people just ignore it. And that leads to an extended crisis and a bigger possibility of doing that quitting thing. Now, what I've learned is the first step out of any crisis is the fact that we need to acknowledge and accept that we have a crisis. I'm not suggesting that we need to accept why something happened, but we have to accept that it happened. We have to accept that it happened. And if you accept, immediately there comes with this a partial recovery. Some people live the rest of their lives accepting something happened, but they never fully live again. They never laugh again. They never experience real joy and meaning in their lives again. A lot of children often lose their parents because a sibling died, a mother or a father that can't accept the death of a brother or a sister could be stuck there in partial recovery, just going through the motions, getting up. But because they are struggling with moving forward, the other siblings, the brothers and sisters, lose a parent. This parachute moment in my life, I was lying in that bath planning my own suicide. And then this voice came out of nowhere and it spoke into my spirit. And that voice says, but who is at this moment sleeping in your bed? Who is asleep in your bed? And you know, at that very moment, my two surviving daughters, Amore and Talia, was asleep in my bed. And you know, that was a powerful parachute moment when I turned my focus away from my loss, when I turned my focus away from the pain of losing my son, the pain so severe that nobody would have criticized me, nobody would have judged me if I had to kill myself there and then, because it was so overwhelming, such a huge crisis that I just didn't have the strength to move on. And the moment I turned my head away from that huge loss, and I recognized the fact that I had two beautiful daughters who have just lost their brother and will now lose their dad if I had to do that. That was my parachute moment. And that brought me to the question that we need to ask. So, he is dead. She doesn't love me anymore. She wants to marry somebody else. She wants to move out. I didn't get that position. My son will never return. It happened. It happened. I can't undo it. It happened. But the moment you turn your head to look for solutions and you ask the right question, and that question is, what now? She left me. What now? I didn't get that position. What now? They appointed my friend into the position that I wanted. They appointed somebody from outside that is less qualified into that position. She broke my trust. He stole my money. What now? And what now is that parachute moment, because it turns your focus away from what happened and it starts looking for solutions. It helps you look for a way out. It helps you look for reasons to move on. And one day when I spoke at a parent gathering where it was a group of parents who have all lost their children. It's a group called Compassionate Friends. They invited me to come and talk there. And I said to them, you know what? In that parachute moment, you need to recognize that there will always be more reasons to go on than reasons to give up. There will always be more reasons to go on than reasons to give up. One mother came and she spoke to me afterwards. She said to me, Stefan, in your parachute moment, you looked at your daughters and they were your reason to move on. My husband and I, we had two sons. They both moved to Europe. In Europe, they went on a skiing trip together. A huge storm and a blizzard hit in the mountains. They went into one of these ski huts for safety. And because it was so cold, they started a fire. And that gas stove exploded. Both my sons died. One died on the spot, and the other one died a couple of weeks later in hospital. My husband and I flew over. We stood next to his bed until he passed on. My husband lost it there, and he didn't want to return with me. He divorced me. I came home back to South Africa on my own. What is my what now? What do I focus on? And in that very moment, I just got this answer. And I said to her, ma'am, you are better qualified to help people with loss than I am. Look away from your loss and help the people around you get up. Tell your story. Tell them what happened to you. And as you start helping people, that's your parachute moment. You look at people's hurt and you reach out and you start picking people up. And in that process, you yourself will heal and get there. What now? What is your what now? And as you start looking around, you start exploring. You start learning the power of words and the power of people. I have learned as I started reaching out to people again, how absolutely necessary, how much I needed the people in my life. How many times over my brothers and my sisters and my friends saved me, rescued me from myself. How they started looking out for me, make sure that I'm okay. How my brother, younger brother, would literally come to me when he was too broken to cry. When I was too broken to cry, he would just hold me. And then in that time, when I started exploring again and getting up, a lot of people would ask me, how are you? Let me share this with you. What a silly question to ask. How are you? To somebody who has just lost somebody close to them. They are hurting. They are bleeding. Don't ask them how they are. Ask them how they feel. And I had the standard response when people say to me, how are you? I said, it's difficult, I'm struggling. It's difficult, I'm struggling. And one day, one of my mentors, he's already passed on himself, he phoned me and he said to me, how are you? And I said, Bill, it's difficult, I'm struggling. And he said to me, Stefan, I can only imagine how difficult it must be, because I have never experienced what you are going through now. But listen to me closely. We all need a place where we can crash. But for the rest of the world, fake it till you make it. I said to him, I don't understand. He said, the next person that asks you how you are, you say these words. You don't have to mean it. You don't have to feel it. You don't have to believe it. Just say it. Every moment stronger, every day better. Every moment stronger, every day better. So with this, what now, looking at reasons to go on and exploring the power of those words, from that moment I started saying that, I got stronger. And from that day, it got better. And I started testing the waters. Now, this is taking you to the last phase of this life that I've lived to this point. You know, when shortly after I moved out of my house, at this time here, when I was confused and I was angry and I was afraid and I was sad and I was questioning God and life, I got a call from my son before he's dead, from his teacher. So this was 2000. He died in 2003. I got a call from his teacher, and she said she needs to speak to me. And I made an appointment, and I went and I sat on one of those little grade 2 chairs in a classroom. And she said to me, after the school holidays, she had the kids on the carpet, and she said to them, how was your holidays? And this one told him about them going to their grandmothers, and there's other thing, and they had all this fun. And she got to my son and she asked him, how was your holiday? And he said, my parents are getting divorced. And she said to me, I just want to ask you one thing. As you work through your divorce, please don't forget the children, because often they hurt in the crossfire, in this fight between the two of you. Do what you do to the best interest of your children. And I very much appreciated that, and it helped me navigate through that period of moving into my new life as a single parent. And then 3 years later, fast forward 3 years later, I was walking into the church for my son's funeral. And in the meantime, he was moved into another school, and this teacher that saw me 3 years before also came to the funeral. And she just greeted me, and she said that they will be praying for me. And eventually, the funeral was over, and a couple of weeks later, I was driving around, and I ran into this lady in a fruit and vegetable store looking for sweet oranges. And we started talking. And she told me 3 years before, when I was in her classroom and she spoke to me about my son, she was working through her divorce as well. So she was feeling the pain I felt, but she was thinking about my son. And I said to her, listen, we should go and have some coffee at some stage. And she said, sure. And I started trying to get hold of her for weeks on end, trying to get an appointment with her, and she just kept putting it off. And one day I said to God, I said, God, if I ask this lady to go coffee with me and she says no again, I'm walking away. And she said yes. So we went on our first coffee, and I tell you, 3 months after that first coffee, I married her. I always tell people, don't try this at home. But I married her, and it was possibly one of the best decisions I've made in my life. I knew we had the same values. I knew we could communicate, And I knew I wanted to live my life with her again. Now, guys, I'd like to tell you more about my what now. So we got married, and after we got married, in the months that followed, she asked me if I would consider having any more children. And I said to her, well, the question is both easy and complicated. I would love to have children with you. But 5 years ago, before even my divorce, so the factory was officially closed. It wasn't possible for me to have any more babies, any more children. And we decided that we will go and speak to a specialist. So we made an appointment with a urologist, and he told us that he has reversed some of these operations successfully and a lot of them unsuccessfully. There's a problem in my case is because it's so long ago, because it's 5 years ago. After a couple of years, and he says about 5 years, the body goes sterile, and therefore your success ratio is extremely slim. But we decided we wanted to do that. Let me just show you a picture of that beautiful lady that I married, my late son's teacher, Adele. We went for the operation, which cost a lot of money and the medical aid didn't pay for. And she took 6 weeks after the operation, she took the results of my test and her history to her gynecologist of many years. She came home in tears. She said, the doctor says it's not going to happen. With the results he had in that test, it wasn't possible. And I said to her, let's just trust God. Let's just have faith and trust God. And you know, for us men, it is a lot more easy than for women. Because every single month, she got reminded that it didn't work. And then a year later, she got all depressed and she cried one evening with some friends of ours. And she said, I don't want to be 100 years old like Abraham's wife, Sarah. Only 2 dreams I had was to be happily married and to be a mom. And in her previous marriage, she could never get pregnant. Never. That's the one thing that she never had, is children. And now, a couple of weeks later, after that evening, I got home, and on the bed was a set of red baby shoes. My beautiful wife was pregnant. So the doctor said he needed to see us. And we went to the doctor at 4 weeks. He explained to us that there won't be any heartbeat. He's just looking for a little dot at the right place. So he put the scanner on. And I was looking over his shoulder at the computer screen. And he showed to a little dot. And he said, listen, guys, I tell you, you guys are lucky you are pregnant. I said to him, why? And he showed me this little dot. I said, what about that little dot? And he said, Stefan, don't be greedy. All I can tell you is that you are pregnant. At 8 weeks, we went back for another visit, and guess what? 2 little hearts were beating. And then at 13 weeks, the message was shared with us that it was a boy and a girl. And at 36 weeks, 2 beautiful little babies were born. This is Mikhail. He came out first, weighing 1.9 kilos, and little Kara, his sister, she weighed 2 kilos. They were in ICU for about 2 weeks, but luckily, this is Mikhail at the age of, I think, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and Kara at 3 weeks. And they grew up, Mikhail and Kara, 2 beautiful children that we were blessed for. So 2 years after that, I said to my wife, maybe we should do the responsible thing. I'm getting older and you're not getting any younger. We wanted 2 children. We were blessed with a boy and a girl. So maybe we should consider closing the factory again. And she said to me, I am not ready. That was in 2007. I said, what do you mean you're not ready? We wanted 2 babies. We got them. She says, yes, but I was pregnant only once. I just don't have peace. And I said, okay, we were like giving God this problem. We said, okay, God, we give you a year. How very arrogant of us. If nothing happens in a year, we think we should close the factory. Then we went into a very difficult recession in 2008, and the end of 2009, New Year's Eve, we sat down, we prayed together, we planned 2010, and we decided that the beginning of 2010, we will close the factory. That night, my wife fell pregnant with Luan. So from a place where we couldn't have any babies, we were blessed with two beautiful sons and a beautiful little daughter. That is Amore, that's my oldest daughter. She's getting married this October. She's one of the two beautiful little girls that were lying in my bed that night when I was in the bath planning my own suicide. This is my second eldest daughter, Talia. She got married in 2010, in November 2010. And there's our family. Now, that's my new son-in-law, Nelius. The twins are standing on the right-hand side. That's Mikol and Kara. This is Talia. This is Luan. This is Amore, my oldest daughter. This is my beautiful wife, Adele. And that face there is obviously me. That is the Lessing family. And that is just to introduce you to Valdo. He was a keen rugby player. This is the December before he died. He died one day before his 11th birthday. My youngest son is turning 11 in August. Every single one of those birthdays are milestones in my recovery that keeps on going, Now, I'm sure that you are thinking, so how, I'm just blanking my screen, don't worry. How long should it take? And what am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? And how do I get through this? And I want to say to you, this is very, very personal. And through this whole time, I had to learn about forgiveness. I had to learn about the danger of bitterness. If you are living with bitterness, it is, and you're not ready to forgive, it's like living and drinking rat poison and wait for the rat to die. You are poisoning yourself. I had to learn to let go. I had to learn to forgive over and over again, even myself for what I did. And you know what? A couple of months after that fateful day, we went back to the place, and I had a vision of God crying himself about, and I learned that he also experienced the loss of a son, and he understood what I was going through. And therefore, you are currently also somewhere on that graph. Maybe at work, you are in a crisis, or you are losing confidence, or maybe at home. Where on this graph are you finding yourself? Are you in the honeymoon just after a change in your life? Are you currently losing confidence? Are you stuck with fear and sadness and anger? Are you currently in a crisis? Are you stuck with why? Are you ready to quit? Where are you finding yourself? Are you maybe in denial and ignoring the crisis in your life because it's going to come at you over and over again until you accept and acknowledge it? Where on this graph are you finding yourself? And what is your what now? So, as you are thinking about this and you're thinking about your life and you are plotting yourself and you're thinking about your what now, we will also allow some questions, and any question will go. And we will allow a few people to unmute themselves and ask the question directly, and the rest we will ask to make use of the chat box. But for now, just take a look at this graph and ask yourself, where am I at this moment? So Doreen, maybe in the chat box, there's a specific request that I'm not aware of, that I should be made aware of before we go to the question and answers, but I'd like to leave this up here so that people can just sort of recognize where they are. And then we've got about 20 minutes left for questions, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Stefan. a lot of the messages coming through are just responses to the various stages of your story. There's quite a lot of, oh, wow, this is amazing. And when you got to the stage where you lost your son as well, there was quite a lot of outpour of emotions. When you spoke about the vasectomy and your new wife wanting children, there was also quite a lot of feedback on what's possible if you believe in God. But I like the bits when you got to the point where you talked about meeting Waldo's teacher. I liked when people began to say, I hope this is going where I hope it's going.
Great stuff.
Anticipate the change in all of that. But for me, Stefan, I love the idea of the parachute moment, to look away. And I think it's just how dramatic you were when you shared it, to say that when you look away from where you would have landed to where you'd love to land, then your body moves with you, and the parachute goes where your body moves. I think it's such a powerful analogy that will stay with me, and I think the people on the call as well, for a very long time. And then you also, I love your response. You say not to ask anybody who is grieving, how are you, but how are you feeling today? And your response?
Absolutely, yeah.
Every day better. I think I'm going to do a whole artwork on this one. Every moment stronger, every day better.
Every moment stronger, every day better. Even now with COVID, if you ask me today how we are, because business and everything and everybody is hurting all over, it's the same thing. Every moment stronger, every day better. Absolutely.
And I love what you said about how choices, what happens in our lives and how choices are sometimes made for us. I can almost tell that in your story, we had all three coming together: the choices you made, the choices other people made for you, and the acts of God or acts of nature. All three together at one point in your life. What a story and what a life. Thank you so much for sharing, Stefan. I'm looking out through the chat box to see if there's something in a comment or question in particular. We'll use the Q&A for questions, but I see this one that says, oh, I have a lot of whys. This one has a lot of whys.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of incredible story. Thank you for sharing, Stefan.
Doreen, if I may quickly respond to that person who said, I've got a lot of whys.
Okay.
A why only works when it was your own choice or your own decision, or somebody that you have a relationship with that you could influence, and you could have prevented it if you didn't make that choice or made a different decision. And there's something to learn from for future decisions and choices. And also that if it's necessary to change your view or your disposition on something, then that why has meaning. But if it's somebody else that you can't influence, that did something, that caused something in your life, or it's an act of nature that you had and nobody had any control over, it's a matter of just recognizing, acknowledging and accepting it and asking, what now? It happened, what now? Maybe that could help that person with those many whys.
Absolutely, and thank you for that clarity. So if it's a choice I made and something I can influence, then why may help. But if it's somebody else's choice that has affected me, or an act of God or act of nature, it's acknowledging that it's happened and asking, what now? Dorothy, that's a profound answer. And for me, it's thank you so much for this session, Stefan. Thank you. It's the difference between when we ask why and what now. Thank you. There's no question in the, and the one who posted the whys, that she has a lot of whys, has responded. She says, what now? Thanks a lot. So thank you, Stefan.
Oh, fantastic.
There's no question in the chat,
I was thinking maybe
there's a question. I see one.
Okay, cool.
Totally forgiving your ex-wife.
Oh yeah, that was what I was going to say. Is people often ask me about forgiveness because I left my son with a friend, and my wife has been unfaithful. So I get that question. So thank you for that. Let me just quickly answer the question. Is absolutely. But you know what I've learned is there's a scripture that says that where Jesus was asked about forgiveness, do we need to forgive even 7 times? And his answer was no, 70 times 7, if I'm not mistaken. Mm. And I was thinking about this thing, and I've realized this is more explaining how the process of forgiveness works. It's not necessarily forgiving the same person for hurting me in the same way over and over and over again. At some stage, you need to recognize this person is going to keep on doing that, and I need to make a decision to make this stop. But sometimes we have to keep on forgiving the same person for one thing until we feel the release and the bitterness go. And I've learned that I need to keep on forgiving her for what she did until I did not feel any resentment or bitterness towards her. And today I can say that we've got a healthy relationship. We have healthy conversation and communication around our daughters, and we will never be friends again. I mean, that is just a different nature of our relationship now. We will never have a dinner together or visit together, but we have a good, healthy relationship because I had to forgive her. With this friend of mine who was at the top, he lost focus of the children, and he got into a conversation and he didn't see that my son was going at a place where he was not supposed to be going. And when I was at the bottom and my son was already dying, he fell on his knees next to me and he said to me, I'm so sorry, Stefan, I'm sorry. And for some reason that I can't explain at that moment, I said to him, don't blame yourself. It wasn't your fault, although I didn't know what happened. And he says, at that moment, I saved his life. But you know, a couple of months later, I had to deal with a sense of resentment towards him. Why didn't he look? Why didn't he do what he was supposed to be doing? And I had to forgive myself. So forgiveness played a huge role in my life, dealing with these hurts. So the quick answer is yes, but it took a long time of forgiving her over and forgiving him over and over again until I could think of them and my thoughts of them were not full of resentment and bitterness. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Stefan. I just like the concept, forgiving the same person over and over again until such a time that your resentment reduces. There's a question in the Q&A box. This one says, is there anything you would have done differently in your journey, Stefan?
I see this is coming from Emilia Kitcher. Emilia, that is a very, very good question. I think the biggest thing I would do differently in my journey, and which I'm practicing every single day, is to be more open to other people's input. You know, when we work through our divorce, I'm going back to my first marriage. I believed I had all the answers, and my ex-wife actually asked me a couple of times that we go for help, and I couldn't understand what was wrong in our marriage, what was wrong in our, and I thought, but we know how to communicate and we know how to sort it out. So the one thing that I've learned and that I am doing differently now is when I realize I don't have the answer, I reach out to people that I believe know that area, can help me. It could be a very close friend. It could be a psychologist. It could be a doctor. It could be my wife. It could be anybody else. But to be open for people's help and advice is one thing that I should have done differently, and which I am really practicing to be better at this moment. In terms of living my life, I still believe that in most cases, it's up to 2 people to make a marriage work. So if 2 people come to me and they are struggling with their relationship, the first prize would always be to sort it out. But the thing I've learned, Emilia, is you can't make somebody else want to. And that's the one piece of grace that I'm always praying for in my relationship now is that my wife would also always want to work things out, regardless of how difficult it gets. I hope this helps a little bit, Emilia.
Thank you for that response, Stefan. There's this one from Galaxy A51, but he or she says, how do I forgive someone who intentionally chooses to hurt me?
Who intentionally chooses to hurt me?
Yeah.
So that is a question that that one would actually ideally need more information for. It could be, what's the nature of the relationship? Is it a spouse? Is it a friend? Is it a sibling? That's the first thing. Is it somebody that you have to relate with? It could be a colleague that you go to work and that person is there. But in the end, the process of forgiveness is the same. But what is extremely important is that we realize we are not forgiving somebody for their sake. We are forgiving other people for our own sake, for our own health, for our own joy, because we are the person losing our joy. We are the people who are putting ourselves in bondage because of our bitterness towards that person. But sometimes that relationship needs to be stopped, because we cannot allow people to keep on hurting us. If it's friends or a friend that is hurting you, maybe it's time to end the friendship. And that hurting could be severe. If it's a spouse, for example, physically beating you and you've tried everything, maybe it's time to stop that relationship. But the process of forgiveness is just constantly choosing to forgive and to constantly set that person free, constantly choosing. And often it makes a whole lot of sense, I believe in most cases, to tell that person, I forgive you for what you're doing. Maybe you don't know that you're hurting me. Maybe you don't agree that you are wrong, but I choose to forgive you. And that process will be always the same. And that is to choose to do it and to keep on doing it. But sometimes there's another decision that needs to go with it.
Thank you so much, Stefan, for this. We're so grateful for your time. And I see a lot of gratitude feedback in the chat box as well, for people, from people saying thank you for sharing your story and thank you for the lessons. So I can say hand on heart that this has been really, really impactful. In fact, I saw one from the speaker for Wednesday. She says, Stefan has finished sharing my story. I don't have anything to share on this.
Oh, sorry about that.
Micah, I can guarantee hand on heart that you do have a story. And that
absolutely. All our stories are unique, hey? So even if a lot of the same things happening, it's happening to other people and it's happening to somebody else in a different way. So I would love to hear your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that, Stefan. And that's why we do what we do on New Work Love Summit, that we'll hear the experiences, the branch out stories of every of the people, of different people, and that will take insights that cause us to take action. So, Stefan, I want to say a big, big thank you for today's session. For those of you on the call, this has been recorded, and we'll share the recording with you on YouTube. For those who missed it as well, you'll get a link to go watch it. But I'll read this final one from Emilia to you, Stefan. She says, Stefan, get ready for the latter rain and God's blessings. Like Job, I believe you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
And this is such a good way to end this session. Stefan, if you could stop sharing your video, we'll just see your face and say our goodbyes. I want to say thank you to everybody for joining as well. If you haven't registered for tomorrow's session, the Life We Believe, please do so today, because registration closes tonight, and we will host Rosemont tomorrow as she shares her journey through healing from the life we believe as children. Thank you so much, Stefan, from a deep place in my heart. I want to say thank you. Thank you for sharing your story. What a remarkable journey you have been on.
It's such a privilege.
Every day better. I have a feeling that this is going to be my response to how are you for a very long time to come. And from my coaching friends on the call, remember, we're going to be saying same. Every moment stronger, every day better. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Doreen. Thank you, everybody. Good luck.